Okay, hello everyone. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and we are here to study A Course in Miracles, the text. And joining me is my daughter Sonia, and my friend
Hi.
Teresa, and my friend Connie. Hi. So we are going to read section 4, the Holy Spirit's Plan of Forgiveness. And we are on chapter 9, the acceptance of the atonement. And it's section 4, Holy Spirit's Plan of Forgiveness. I just want to point out that the previous section, the correction of error, let's see, really focused on how it's not our job to focus on the error. and And so I think this is what the next section is. It's telling us, okay, don't focus on the error, but here is the plan of forgiveness that you do need to focus on. So paragraph 1, atonement is for all, because it is the way to undo the belief that anything is for you alone. To forgive is to overlook. Look then beyond error, and do not let your perception rest upon it, for you will believe what your perception holds. Accept as true only what your brother is, if you would know yourself. Perceive what he is not, and you cannot know what you are, because you see him falsely. Remember always that your identity is shared, and that its sharing is its reality. Okay, so atonement is for all. Okay, so the atonement is God's plan um, for salvation, which is the Holy Spirit, which is the answer to the belief in separation. Um, and and basically, atonement is just the recognition that there is no separation, that it never happened. Now it's saying here that it's for all. So atonement is for all because that's the truth. We are not separate. Okay, we are one son of God. Um, and so if we start, let's see. Okay, so because it's for all, that is the way to undo the belief that anything is for you alone. So the minute we believe that something is for us alone, well, we're going to be believing we are separate from our brothers. Okay. And of course, there's, a hint of specialness there because, oh, this is only for me. I am so special, no one else has it. Or I have special favor from God or whatever. Hey, I have, the last ticket to the, Warriors game, and so no one else can get tickets. So that's for me alone, that kind of a thing. So that's a belief in separation. So it's a belief in inequality, basically. Okay, so number 2, to forgive is to overlook. So this is going back up to when it was talking about correction and error. And so look then beyond error, and do not let your perception rest upon it, for you will believe what your perception holds. Okay, and a good example of that was what Connie and I were just talking about earlier, because last week she thought we were going to come back and do another section. And Sonia and I thought that we had decided that we were just going to do one section. So there was an error there, which is a miscommunication, a misperception. Okay. And so in that case, if she had held on to um, the idea that, oh, what happened here? They made an error because according to my understanding, we were supposed to do 2 sections and not one, rather than say, oh, okay, well, there's a miscommunication here because we're not on the same page. So I'm just going to let that go. So I'm going to look beyond the error and not make that a reason to hold a grudge or a grievance against someone. Connie? Yeah.
Actually, I just thought maybe because we were having such a storm, I just thought, well, maybe the power went out, and I didn't
Yes.
have a grudge, but
Yes.
and I can certainly go there with other situations, but no, I just thought, okay, well, whatever.
Whatever, exactly. And that's what it's saying here. Okay. It's saying, yes, this is really the plan here. The plan is to look beyond error and do not let your perception rest on it, because when we do, we will believe what the misperception is saying to us. If we hold on to that perception and not let it go, we start believing in it. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
Connie? Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think in the previous section too, it mentioned that if we perceive them and react to them as if they are real, then it will make it real to us.
Yes, because we are
Yeah.
believing we are right in what we are perceiving, and we make that the truth rather than recognizing that perception cannot show us truth. You see, because it's limited. Perception is always limited. So 4, accept as true only what your brother is. Okay. If you would know yourself. And last time we also talked about that because we said, it's not what your brother does. Okay. It's what your brother is. And most of the time we judge based on what my brother does or didn't do. And this is saying, no, don't look at that. Just overlook that. Just remember what your brother is. If you would know yourself as innocent, okay? Because we want to come back to the truth of what we are, which as we were created, holy, innocent, not separate from God. So number 5, perceive what he is not, and you cannot know what you are, okay? Because you see him falsely. So once we believe that what he did was wrong, we have made him wrong, and we have projected guilt. And now we don't see his innocence anymore. And therefore, we cannot see that in ourselves either. And that's what 6 says. Remember always that your identity is shared and that its sharing is its reality. So our innocence and holiness cannot be real to us until we recognize that that's what our brother is in truth, because our identity is shared. Because in truth, we're not separate. We're one son of God. Okay? Is that pretty clear? Yeah. Okay, number 2.
You have a part to play in the atonement, but the plan of the atonement is beyond you. You do not understand how to overlook errors, or you would not make them. It would merely be further error to believe either that you do not make them or that you can correct them without a guide to correction. And if you do not follow this guide, your errors will not be corrected. The plan is not yours because of your limited ideas about what you are. This sense of limitation is where all errors arise. The way to undo them, therefore, is not of you, but for you. This is basically just asking for help, right, from the Holy Spirit um, to have them corrected for me, because of myself who believes that I am limited, can't do jack crap about anything.
Yeah, remember what we were saying right before about if we're the ones that make the error, okay, well, we made the error because obviously we could not see how we cannot see the correction there, or we would not have made the error in the first place.
Mm.
So because we can't, so we made the error in the first place because we were not in our right mind. And since we're not in our right mind, we're not in a place to be able to correct the error without the help of the Holy Spirit, who is in our right mind. And therefore, following the guidance would then lead us back to our right mind, which is the undoing of the error, because it's the undoing of the misperception, which is limited, and what error is, because it's not seeing the big picture. It's not seeing clearly. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Connie? Yeah.
Well, it just makes me wonder, okay, so to practice this, so thinking about what I misperceived last week, and then so I see, oh, I went ahead and made a story about it. Like I told you, oh, maybe the power went out, maybe there was another emergency or blah, blah, blah. But that seems like it's just keeping that whole thing going rather than just completely overlooking it. But I'm not so sure that seems to be the best approach. I mean, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, because we
Yeah,
make stories to make, I don't know, to make it okay.
we do. We make stories because we want to hold on to the idea that our perception is true. We don't
Right.
question that our perception is true. So
Yeah.
you didn't say like, oh, they're not on there. Did I misunderstand what they said? You see, which would
Yeah.
mean that I was wrong. So we
Yeah.
rarely want to be wrong. So we make up stories in order to hold on to that our idea that we are right and we did understand correctly, but they were wrong in some way.
Yeah. So this is what I love about just giving examples of just, ordinary
Hmm.
things that occur, to just really drill it down and see, yeah, what goes on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the main thing to really understand is that perception. Okay, you really
Mhm.
have to understand that we cannot trust our perception to be right.
Yeah.
We always have to question it. Um, because that way we're not in a position to make up stories or to judge. And we just say, okay, whatever it was, whatever. I don't need to know because I don't know. Unless I call, and you could have called if you wanted to. You could have just called me, and asked me directly, even though you text me, but I didn't see your text. So, um, yes. So here it says, yeah, and if you do not follow this guide, your errors will not be corrected. Um, uh, because the misperception cannot correct itself because it's misperceiving. The misperceiver cannot correct itself. Um, and also it's saying, look, the plan is not yours. Don't take credit for the plan of atonement here. And I think this is what it was saying earlier about that the Holy Spirit forgives everything. And it's not our job to forgive everything. It's our job to heal the mind in time, which means that in time we have to practice the overlooking of the error, which is the fundamental piece in the definition of forgiveness that the Course in Miracles offers. I forgive you for what you did not do. but I thought you did. I believed you did. I made up a story that says you did. I misinterpreted that you did. So anyway, yeah. And the way to undo the error then is not of you, but for you. So it's a plan for us. So you could say that it's a blessing that we receive, that we accept. It's not something we make up. So we don't take credit for that, because the ego will jump in there and try to take credit for that. Okay, number 3.
The atonement is a lesson in sharing, which is given you because you have forgotten how to do it. The Holy Spirit merely reminds you of the natural use of your abilities by reinterpreting the ability to attack into the ability to share. He translates what you have made into what God created. If you would accomplish this through him, you cannot look on your abilities through the eyes of the ego, or you will judge them as it does. All their harmfulness lies in the ego's judgment. All their helpfulness lies in the judgment of the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Okay, so atonement is a lesson in sharing, which is given you because you have forgotten how to do it. And so the Course distinguishes between sharing, which is extending, and what the ego does. The ego doesn't share. Let's see. So sharing, because the ego takes ownership of things, it wants to say, this is mine, I possess this, and if I decide to give some to you, then that's a loss to me. So it's a belief in scarcity, but atonement is not a belief in scarcity. Atonement says, this is given you, okay, because you have forgotten how to do it, but it's actually our natural state. It's our natural ability to extend and to create the way that God does. But in time, until we remember, until the mind is healed, we are not in a position to, let's see, to be without guidance from the Holy Spirit. Because that's the process of remembering that we are in heaven, and in heaven we create. So let's see. So the Holy Spirit is reminding you of the natural use of your abilities. By reinterpreting the ability to attack in the ability to share, he translates what you have made into what God created. If you would accomplish this through him, you cannot look on your abilities through the eyes of the ego. So a lot of times the ego definitely wants to take credit as the self for any accomplishments that I have with abilities. I mean, in particular with healing, because, the next section is the unhealed healer. So since our function in time is for the healing of our mind, that we're learning that we have the power to heal the mind, but it wants to be clear that that is not a power that belongs to us. That's a power that comes from God. So it's not our power, like the ego would want to say, oh, hey, I developed my ability to heal, and now I can heal others, and therefore it's coming from me. Okay. Well, it's not coming from me, because all healing, like the miracle, comes from the same source, which is love, which is God. So it's coming from out of time. And let's see. Yes. And so number 4, if you would accomplish this, which is to return the mind to creating. Through him, you cannot look on your abilities through the eyes of the ego, or you will judge them as it does. And all their harmfulness lies in the ego's judgment, because what we do is we take the abilities and we make them, let's see, the ego uses them for the purpose of separation, of making ourself unique, special, you know, stand out in the world, an idol, whatever. It's always based on inequality, on separating, making myself better, superior, um, looked up to, all of that. So all their helpfulness lies in the judgment of the Holy Spirit. Yes. So this is kind of a lesson in humility, I think, because the miracle is always directed by the Holy Spirit. So we can't offer just a miracle to someone because I want to, and not to someone else because I don't want to. It's guidance. So we are the ones that are taking guidance and not the ones choosing who gets a miracle and who doesn't, because we don't know everything. The Holy Spirit is the one that knows everything. Okay. Let's see, number 4.
The ego, too, has a plan of forgiveness because you are asking for one, though not of the right teacher. The ego's plan, of course, makes no sense and will not work. By following its plan, you will merely place yourself in an impossible situation to which the ego always leads you. The ego's plan is to have you see error clearly first and then overlook it. Yet, how can you overlook what you have made real? By seeing it clearly, you have made it real and cannot overlook it. That is where the ego is forced to appeal to mysteries, insisting that you must accept the meaningless to save yourself. Many have tried to do this in my name, forgetting that my words make perfect sense because they come from God. They are as sensible now as they ever were because they speak of ideas that are eternal. Hmm.
Hmm.
Basically, it's just saying don't listen to the ego. Right? That's not the right source.
Yes, and it's commenting on how the ego tries to trick us into
And it
following it.
does.
Yeah, into following it. And it's basically nonsense, but it will say, oh no, it's not nonsense. It's a mystery, that you must revere because it's beyond our little understanding. Um, but really it's contradictory. That's why it doesn't make any sense. And so what it's saying here is that it says on line 8, many have tried to do this in my name, forgetting that my words make perfect sense because they come from God. I mean, that's not something that I heard growing up when I was going to um, to my catechism and all of the mass, whatever, they were teaching me. They were not teaching me that God makes perfect sense, because I had a lot of questions that were not answered, that I would ask a priest and he could not answer it. So um so so at that point, I kind of began to accept the idea that, this stuff was a mystery, and that it was either I was not intelligent enough to be able
Mhm.
to understand it, that it was beyond my capacity to make sense out of it. And so you kind of stop questioning it because you just think, oh man, I'm just dumb. I don't get it. But it's not true. It's just that, you know, So it's really good to hear that what, the ideas that God's thoughts, the ideas that come from God are sensible. Number 9, they are as sensible now as they ever were because they speak of ideas that are eternal and don't change. And that's the big problem with perception and the ego, is that it's so specialized, it's so subjective that it's always changing. There's an exception for this, there's an exception for that. Oh yeah, this is true, but except for, when this happens, then it's not. Okay. So you can't keep track of it because it's gets so complicated. Um, so I think it's also helpful because when we're trying to distinguish between the guidance, between the ego and the Holy Spirit, okay, the Holy Spirit is never going to make the guidance complicated. Okay, that's going to be the ego. um, Complication is not better than simplicity. A lot of us think that, oh yeah, complicated things are, must be more advanced in learning. So yeah, that would be a trick. Let's see, you have made it real. Yeah, but the other thing here is that forgiveness can be misunderstood. And the way that I learned it was incorrectly initially, because I learned that forgiveness implied, yeah, looking at the error and then just saying, okay, I'm a better person than you, so I'm just going to let it go and forgive you for it. But I still held on to the perception that the error was real. And so this is the difference here between the way the Holy Spirit looks at it, because the Holy Spirit will look at the error with us, but it will undo it so that the perception will be cleared and we can see there is no error there. The misperception gets cleared. So now there's true perception and there is no error. It's like erasing it with your pencil when you wrote the wrong answer to your math problem and then putting in the correct answer. It's not there anymore once it's corrected. Whereas the other way, the error is still there. You just decide not to take vengeance on it or to act on it or whatever. Okay, number 5. My turn. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, forgiveness that is learned of me does not use fear to undo fear, nor does it make it real, nor does it make real the unreal and then destroy it. Forgiveness through the Holy Spirit lies simply in looking beyond the error from the beginning and thus keeping it unreal for you. Do not let any belief in its realness enter your mind, or you will also believe that you must undo what you have made in order to be forgiven. What has no effect does not exist, and to the Holy Spirit, the effects of error are non-existent. By steadily and consistently canceling out all its effects everywhere and in all respects, he teaches that the ego does not exist and proves it. Okay. Okay. So forgiveness that is learned of me does not use fear to undo fear. Yeah, it's really interesting that that sometimes we use strategies to help ourselves, when we're upset or something. Let's see, like I was talking to my son Oscar, and he was saying, he goes, he says, the advice that I got for because smoking is a problem is to just smoke more. I go, what do you mean? He goes, yeah. He says, yeah, if you have a problem with smoking, just smoke more. Um, so it kind of reminds me of this, that the strategy, so it's a little bit like this. Okay. If my child is upset and crying, okay, they're in fear. Okay. And as a parent, what I do is I yell at them and I say, stop crying, and they don't stop crying. And so then I go, okay, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to spank your bottom. And so that gives them more fear. So I'm adding fear to fear. Um, uh, so, so, so that's kind of what it's saying here is that, that's a strategy that doesn't work. And the Holy Spirit, Spirit is teaching us a way to forgive that does work, that does undo fear. So two, nor does it make real the unreal and then destroy it. Yes. So this would be, for example, like when we say, oh, let's see, make real the unreal, like if we believe that that something is evil, oh, you got to get rid of it because it's evil, destroy it or something like that. Like like the belief in superstition, there's a lot of beliefs in superstitions that would if you make it real in your mind, you're going to say, oh, that's got an evil spirit in it, you got to destroy it. A lot of the Harry Potter stuff, would fall into that kind of category. That's why he had to go and find all those amulets. What were they? The 7 things that he
The
had to go into.
Horcruxes.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Horcruxes, because he had to destroy them, right? Because they made the evil real now. So now they had to go and destroy it. So number 3, forgiveness through the Holy Spirit lies simply in looking beyond the error from the beginning. Okay, and thus keeping it unreal for you. So from the beginning means that we never judged it. So so to look beyond the error, we have to let go of our judgment of it as an error. Okay, because in order to see error, we have to judge that there's something wrong there. Okay, and the Holy Spirit doesn't judge it. That's why there's never any error there from the beginning, because it never goes into the making my brother wrong for what he did. Because once we make the judgment, we won't be able to overlook the error until we undo the judgment. Because holding on to the judgment is what makes it real for us. Because we believe we're right, and in order to be right, we have to hold on to the judgment, and we have to make that judgment true, and that's why it becomes real to us. Because we don't want to let go of the judgment and be wrong. So 4, do not let any belief in its realness enter your mind, or you will also believe that you must undo what you have made in order to be forgiven. Yeah, so what happens is once we apply the idea of judgment and we've made our brother wrong, well, then we're going to have to apply that to ourselves. You will also believe that you must undo what you have made in order to be forgiven. So that judgment is like a double-edged sword, because now if we end up doing the same thing, we're going to be automatically judging ourselves because of it, precisely because we're holding on to that judgment in order to make our brother wrong. And now it's going to make us wrong too, you see, because we're protecting that judgment. So and because we're giving it power to condemn, we're actually condemning ourselves. So let's see. 5, what has no effect does not exist. So judgment really, condemnation really has no effect in reality. The only thing is that we're afraid of it because we've made it real to ourselves. And because we're afraid of it, then it seems to have effects. Okay, because the fear comes with it. But it doesn't really have any the judgment itself has no reality in itself. So what has no effects does not exist, and to the Holy Spirit, the effects of error are non-existent. Because the Holy Spirit recognizes that our condemnation, our judgment of our brother for being wrong is because we're not in our right mind. And if we're not in our right mind, then it's the ego that is not a real cause, and it cannot have a real effect. It's an illusory self that is miscreating. And the Holy Spirit knows that the miscreations cannot have real effects, and that's why the healing occurs. That's why we have the miracle. 6, by steadily and consistently canceling out all of its effects, that's the miracle right there. Everywhere and in all aspects, he teaches that the ego does not exist and proves it. So that's teaching the atonement. That's why the miracles teach us that the separation never happened, because it cancels out all of the effects of error, of the belief that we sinned, that we did something wrong, that we are condemned. And because all the effects go with that, you see healing, healing results, and proves it that way. Okay, number 6.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Follow the Holy Spirit's teaching in forgiveness, then, because forgiveness is his function and he knows how to fulfill it perfectly. That is what I mean when I said that miracles are natural, and when they do not occur, something has gone wrong. Miracles are merely the sign of your willingness to follow the Holy Spirit's plan of salvation, recognizing that you do not understand what it is. His work is not your function, and unless you accept this, you cannot learn what your function is. This is kind of reminding me of the authority problem, because it's kind of like, oh, I want to be in charge of how I save myself from whatever perceived like threat or whatever that I'm trying to save myself from to get salvation. But I mean, if I really look at everything that I've tried to do to save myself, I can't do it. Like none of it works. So this is just reminding me of that, because
Mm-hmm.
it says his work is not your function.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about letting go of the idea that I'm in charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you use the word, it's not, you use the word get. So a couple of sections back, we were looking at that and we were saying that it's about receiving. So when we're following guidance, it's about receiving. So it's not about getting, right? Because we're not doing it on our own. We're just following guidance. So it's about trust more than anything, because in order to follow guidance, you have to trust the Holy Spirit because you don't know. And most of us are not very comfortable not knowing. We tend to go into a survival mode because we've learned that in the world you have to know what the heck you're doing, or you're going to make a mistake and do something, that could be dangerous. So we have all this fear around not knowing and around trusting. Um, and following the Holy Spirit is really a place of faith and trust, in a place of recognizing that we don't know everything. And there's actually a lot of safety there, but it's kind of hard to let go of the fear that goes along with believing that we're in charge of our own safety and our own protection. So there's fear in letting that go, but once we let it go, there's a lot of safety in the trust. Yes, so let's see. Yeah, and that's what it says here when it says that miracles are natural. Because when we take the place of just receiving guidance from the Holy Spirit, they are just natural because the Holy Spirit's in charge. And that's what the Holy Spirit does. It corrects misperception, which is what the miracle is. And it releases, and the result is healing, the result of the miracle. So 3, the miracles are the sign of your willingness to follow the Holy Spirit's plan of salvation. So when we start seeing the miracles, then we can really recognize and reinforce further, wow, I am really being taken care of here. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to worry. I can trust even. It cements the trust even more. Yeah, because see, it says recognizing that you do not understand what it is. So it is there's a faith in there, that, I can just trust the plan of salvation, Holy Spirit's plan of salvation. I don't have to know everything. Yeah, so number 8 or number 7.
The confusion of functions is so typical of the ego that you should be quite familiar with it by now. The ego believes that all functions belong to it, even though it has no idea what they are. This is more than mere confusion. It is a particularly dangerous combination of grandiosity and confusion that makes the ego likely to attack anyone and anything for no reason at all. This is exactly what the ego does. It is unpredictable in its responses because it has no idea of what it perceives.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so the ego, because it is separated from knowledge, okay, it has to rely on, making up stories and just sort of what's the word? Um, pretending and um, just trying to look good, okay, without really knowing what the heck is going on. And so it's trying to believe that it's in charge of all function, that it's in control, and that it knows everything when it doesn't. And so what it's saying is, look, this is not just confusion, okay, because it's dangerous because of the grandiosity of it, because it really believes that there's that I that says, oh, I'm in a position to judge. I know. So, and that's why the attack, comes in here, because once we really buy into the idea that that the ego does know everything, that it's basically usurped the power of God, we can feel very justified in attacking others for no reason at all. Um, and this is what the ego does when we're identified with it. So, and that's why it's unpredictable. So, like, So if you know anyone that has really unpredictable behavior, it's because, sometimes they can be very nice, but then all of a sudden they can turn on you and they can become very vicious. And so you can tell that the person is not in their right mind because there's no stability in their behavior. And that's because behavior takes direction from perception. And see, number 6, it is unpredictable in its responses because it has no idea of what it perceives. So it can't make sense of what it perceives because it can only perceive error, which is all nonsense. And so it's reacting to error. And so, of course, the behavior and the reactions are going to be like, what? They're not going to be appropriate for the situation or, the circumstances. So anyway, let's see. Anything else there? Okay, number 8.
If you have no idea what is happening, how appropriately can you expect to react? You might ask yourself, regardless of how you may account for the reaction, whether its unpredictability places the ego in a sound position as your guide. Let me repeat that the ego's qualifications as a guide are singularly unfortunate, and that it is a remarkably poor choice as a teacher of salvation. Anyone who elects a totally insane guide must be totally insane himself. Nor is it true that you do not realize the guide is insane. You realize it because I realize it, and you have judged it by the same standard I have.
Whoa. Oh boy.
Okay, so it's basically saying don't follow the ego. It's crazy. And that
It's
we already know
crazy.
that.
We do that, and when we do, why do we then?
It just seems to be what we fall into naturally. It's habitual.
Yeah, it's habitual. I mean, but there's also, the attraction. There's also an attraction to it. I mean, look at
Yes.
the entertainment industry. You ask yourself, how could anyone watch some of that stuff, right? It's pretty insane. Yeah, well, you hear a lot of the teenagers, they use the word insane to mean, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so there's definitely an attraction there to the insanity. So, and I mean, obviously it's conditioned, and obviously the media um, has, I'm sure, something to do with it, but it wouldn't be showing up in the media if it wasn't something that we wanted to see. So, um, yeah. Yep. So it's number 3. Let me repeat that the ego's qualifications as a guide are singularly unfortunate. And that it is a remarkably poor choice as a teacher of salvation. And ultimately, we learned that the hard way. I would say, my experience. And sooner or later, we get tired of that insanity because it doesn't ultimately really give us what we want. It's a seeking and not finding. And I think that once we've kind of followed it and basically just ran into a wall each time, after a few times, we start realizing, this really hurts. I don't think I want to keep doing this anymore. So we start looking for another way. And then we start on this journey of healing the mind. Okay, number 9. I think is it Connie's turn?
No, it's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. The ego literally lives on borrowed time, and its days are numbered. Do not fear the last judgment, but welcome it and do not wait, for the ego's time is, quote unquote, borrowed from your eternity. This is the second coming that was made for you as the first was created. The second coming is merely the return of sense. Can this possibly be fearful? So actually, this is good news. The second coming is good news. And it's interesting that it says here that in line 3, that the first was created, the first coming was created, but it doesn't say that about the second coming. It says it was made for you. Do you see? So the second coming is really part of the world of time, not of eternity. So the first judgment was part of eternity, but the second one is made in time as a correction, which is the return of sense or sanity. Yeah. But, you know, it can be fearful if we're still very attached to and attracted to the insanity of the world. So, you know, it's just the mind has to be ready for that. Okay, number 10.
What can be fearful but fantasy? And who turns to fantasy unless he despairs of finding satisfaction in reality? Yet it is certain that you will never find satisfaction in fantasy, so that your only hope is to change your mind about reality. Only if the decision that reality is fearful is wrong, wait, only if the decision that reality is fearful is wrong can God be right. And I assure you that God is right. Be glad, then, that you have been wrong, but this was only because you did not know who you were. Had you known, you could no more have been wrong than God can.
Did it get confusing in there, Sonia?
No, I'm just kind of hanging here on the first one, unless he despairs of
Ah,
defining satisfaction in reality.
yeah.
So that's just referring to the fear of love.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tied to line 3. Only if the decision that reality is fearful is wrong can God be right. So we are reality. We are created by God, and what we are is reality. Okay, but if we misperceive reality, if we misperceive ourselves, which is misperceiving God and our brothers, okay, we can be very fearful, and we can also feel like, oh, what I am is not satisfactory. I'm not good enough. You know, I'm not perfect. I'm imperfect. I'm incomplete. So once we make a judgment of reality of ourselves, it's because we believe we can't find satisfaction there. It's because we're doubting the truth of what we are. Um, we have a hard time believing that. And so we believe our own judgments instead of what the truth is. Um, and then we become afraid of it. And uh, so only when we realize that we're wrong about that can God be right, because the truth is only good. and reality is only good. And that's what we are. But as long as we have any doubt on that, we're going to make God wrong. And we're going to be afraid of ourselves and of God and of our brothers and of reality. So that's five. Five says, be glad then that you have been wrong. Because and this was only because you did not know who you were. Had you known, you could no more have been wrong than God can. So it's about what we believe we are, and being wrong in that we are believing that we are not as we were created. Which is a distortion, it's a misperception. And it's the error that needs healing. Because it's a fantasy. So 10, what can be fearful but fantasy? And who turns to fantasy unless he despairs in finding satisfaction in reality? So in other words, we go to the ego because we go to look in the wrong place because we think that because we think that reality is not satisfactory the way we have judged it. Not because that's really true, but it's because we've judged it that way. And so that's why 2 says, yet is certain you will never find satisfaction in fantasy. So we turn to fantasy. Okay, but we're not going to find it there. You will never find it there. So your only hope now is to change your mind about reality. And that's the miracle right there, which is the healing of the mind. Is to accept ourselves as innocent and holy, and the same with our brothers, no exception. Does that make sense now, Sonia?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Number 9.
I think it's 11.
Oops, sorry. It says T9. Yeah, that's 11.
Okay. The impossible can happen only in fantasy. When you search for reality in fantasies, you will not find it. The symbols of fantasy are of the ego, and of these you will find many, but do not look for meaning in them. They have no more meaning than the fantasies into which they are woven. Fairy tales can be pleasant or fearful, but no one calls them true. Children may believe them, and so, for a while, the tales are true for them. Yet when reality dawns, the fantasies are gone. Reality has not gone in the meanwhile. The second coming is the awareness of reality, not its return.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay. Anything you want to say with that one, Connie?
No.
No. Well, the last line, right, is a good clarification here. The second coming is the awareness of reality, not its return, because we tend to hear the second coming as the return of, God coming to bring judgment. The second, the last judgment is the second coming. um, but it's not that reality has ever left us and therefore it's returning from having left us. It's that it's never left us. The only thing that happened is that we lost awareness of it. And so the second coming is the return of awareness of the truth of our reality. So the separation never happened. We never were separated from reality. We just lost the awareness of it. And the loss of awareness is what the ego is, what the belief in the ego is. It's a belief that we are separate from reality, from God, from our true nature. Okay. Okay, so 12. Behold, my child, reality is here. It belongs to you and me and God, and is perfectly satisfying to all of us. Only this awareness heals because it is the awareness of truth. Okay. Okay, that's pretty clear. So it's a shared reality. To you, me, God. It's all the same reality. And it is here. It has never left. Reality has never left. So it's like saying, when it when you close your eyes, you don't see what's in front of you, but it's not because it's gone, it's still there. So that's just what it's saying. Reality is here. So if you're not aware of it, that's why it says that miracles are normal and everyday, but we don't see them. We're not aware of them. So they're actually there. We're just not aware of them. And let's see. And I think that's what it said up here. Something about, let's see. So the detour into fear, or the idea of illusion or of dreaming or of sleeping, is just that idea, the loss of awareness of the truth of what we are. And it's a return to that, but the return is not because it has ever left us. It's that we lost awareness of it, even though it's still there. Okay. Okay, so that concludes that section. The next section is unhealed healer. So unless there's any questions, I think we can stop. Anybody have any questions before we stop? No? Okay. Oops, let me see.